We are back with another mock draft, and today Matt is in the hot seat as we break down how he did on today's action-packed episode of Locked On Fantasy Baseball.
You are Locked On Fantasy Baseball, your daily fantasy baseball podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, fantasy baseball fanatics. I'm Dominic Martino, here as always with Matthew Onan, and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Thank you to our everydayers and new listeners for making us your first listen each and every day. Matt and I are longtime fantasy baseball analysts, and between the two of us, there is over 40 years of fantasy baseball knowledge, and we do this podcast to share it with you. Wherever you watch and or listen, please be sure to like, subscribe, comment, rate, and review. It helps us to grow the podcast, and we truly appreciate it. And guys, we are back with another mock draft. And as I mentioned earlier, today Matt is in the hot seat. So you know what? We're not even gonna, tidbits over here. We're gonna pass it right over to Matt. And Matt, why don't you break down, the format that you did this mock draft in, where you picked from, and let's get into the team.
All right. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see the team in an actual layout, but I will read it off and then I'll tell you how it broke down, what the deal was. So my catcher is Samuel Basallo. First base is Mike Bush. Second base is Jose Altuve. Shortstop is Gunnar Henderson. Third base is Jordan Westberg. My three outfielders are James Wood, Julio Rodriguez, O'Neil Cruz. My two starting pitchers are Logan Gilbert, Joe Ryan, and then closers are Jeff Hoffman, Dennis Santana. Chase Burns is one of my keys. So is Spencer Schwellenbach, Brandon Woodruff, Andrew Abbott. That's the starting lineup. Then for my bench, I got Trey, the Savage himself, Anthony Santander, the Bank, Kerry Carpenter, Jack Leiter, and Edward Cabrera. Now, this is a 5x5 standard head-to-head roto, 3 outfielder league with 2 utilities, 1 catcher, no middle infield, none of that, extra NFBC stuff. I was picking in the 7th overall pick in a 12-man league. It was actually a pretty decent spot. I will say that. I obviously started off with Julio Rodriguez, which I honestly thought was a nice place, right? I could have went Tucker. I considered him pretty heavily, or Elliot De La Cruz. But ultimately, like with the state of outfielder right now, I really want a top-end outfielder. So that's what I went for. I just got the best outfielder available, and that was Julio Rodriguez. Finally showed, a consistent year, giving me hope that he's going to be able to do this now year in and year out, because the dude obviously has the talent, because he finishes with the year, superior year overall numbers, but now does it for a consistent whole baseball season. So gives me hope. Then I followed it up with Gunnar Henderson. Got him in the 2nd round, which was actually bonkers for me. I love the kid. I think he's one of the top shortstops in the league. And quite honestly, he's a stud. Him going this late, steal, stacking it up. I'm going to get stolen bases. I'm going to get power. I'm going to get runs. I'm going to get ribs. I think the team is taking a step forward. Crushed it. Then I tapped outfielder again. I got James Wood in the 3rd. And that was actually really nice. Plus, once you start looking at all the outfielders going that early, going like that went already, there's not many left that you really feel great about walking away with, right? That is the question that you ask yourself. Where is that standpoint? What is the cutoff of outfielders and talent that you're going to be smashing down on to go and walk away with a true studs at the position? Because there's not many. There's a big talent drop off. So then I'm like, okay, I went 3 bets. I really need to grab an SP. And I did. I got Logan Gilbert. I think that was amazing start to my draft. I love him a lot. I think he's great. I think that he is the guy that I feel the most comfortable walking away with. It was just an injury-riddled season. He's been, pretty much remotely healthy for his entire career outside of last year. So you give him the benefit of the doubt. So steal, tapped pitching again, went Joe Ryan. Thought that was a steal as well. Again, pitching started to drop off, and I pulled the trigger, kind of got the guys I really feel great about walking away was an SP2. Then this one got a little tricky. In the 6th, Spencer Schwellenbach. Now, I was like, that value is too much to pass up. I was actually considering the Austin Riley phase like Dom did around this time in his last mock draft. But I was like, yo, you can't pass up on a strong SP3. Yeah, there was other options, but I feel like my bats were so strong, I can actually just triple tap SP. I got a really great place. The only downside to me going so many so many pitchers in a row, I missed out on a couple outfielders. And that's where I ended up with O'Neil Cruz, which I think was a mistake on my behalf. I'll be the first one to say it. But also, too, the options at outfield at this point weren't real great. Guys that went before O'Neil Cruz at the position between me picking Spencer Schwellenbach and O'Neil Cruz was a little rough. It was pretty much Byron Buxton, Cody Bellinger, and guys going after O'Neil Cruz, Randy Arozarena, question marks surrounding Christian Yelich, Brandon Nimmo, I'm not really a fan of. I'm not a fan of Michael Harris if you've been a part of the show for a while. Ian Happ, Stowers with a lot of question marks, even though I like him. The question marks rage, so I really felt like, okay, O'Neil Cruz is the biggest swing for the fence. At that point, if he hits on his full potential, I'm gold. If he repeats what he did last year, you're not mad at the position, especially as your third OF. So I'm really not mad at this situation right now. Then this is where you start seeing me go and playing on hard mode. My next pick after O'Neil Cruz, Jordan Westburg. Been preaching it. He's a steal going in the 8th round. Second and third eligibility gives me a lot of flexibility on how I can handle my draft. And I like that, especially around this time where there's a lot of question marks on who I'm going to be able to grab. So I went 3 bats back to back to back. I got Michael Busch. Michael Busch is my first baseman. Love what he did, consistent for most of the year. Power's definitely there, and I think he had a good season. My 12th overall first baseman. Most of the first basemen are gone by this point. And I'm pretty much sold on Michael Busch at where I drafted him in the 9th. Followed that up with Jose Altuve. That was a nice one. Now, I could have went pitcher, but I have 3 strong SPs that I feel good holding off. Plus, what I got next was part of it too. But now I conquered my infield wholeheartedly. Because now at this point, you got Michael Busch, Altuve, Gunnar Henderson, and then Jordan Westburg. My bats look really tight. In all honesty, I'm not wanting for more than I would say just stolen bases. But again, James Wood has some upside. Julio Rodriguez, O'Neil Cruz, Gunnar Henderson, and even Westberg's got a little bit of wheels. I think right now I'm in a great spot. Now we'll take it a little bit further. Here's where I start again, showing where I'm good at what I do. Brandon Woodruff had a great campaign after returning from the injuries. Looked great. As long as he stays healthy, I'm awesome. And that's my SP4. Like, how you doing? And then you follow up with a little Trey Savage, which I'm actually a huge fan. Scooped him up early. And he's not even really a starter for me in my consideration. But this is around his ADP. And I'm like, all right, I really want this kid on my team. I think he's going to break out. I really think he's a value. I'm picking him now. Then I get Hoffman, which in round 13, I get my closer 1 on a really good team that's going to hold down the job. And even if he repeats exactly what he did last year, you're pretty happy. A lot of saves. Then you snag Chase Burns. How you doing? I mean, my staff is looking better by the second. That's my favorite part, right? It just keeps getting stronger. Then you keep going, and okay, time to get some bats. I got to fill out my UTs. I get Spencer Torkelson, power out the wazoo, a guy that really took a step forward. I think there's more. I have him slotted in as my first base as a top end first baseman, chilling. I also think this is a great UT spot. Then I scooped up Andrew Abbott. What a steal! Guy had a phenomenal season, and everything about his game is repeatable. Don't be surprised if he's on my target list for this season. And then I saw Dennis Santana. I may not be a Pirates fan, but he has the job right now, and I don't really care about my RP2, but I think he's going to be the guy that's it's his job to lose, and then I'll worry about it later, in all honesty. I have one stud, and then I have a guy that's going to get the predominant saves for at least the first 2 months, I would say. You keep going. Mike Trout, again, I talked about the underlying stats the other day. And I think it's a great pair. Maybe not the strongest UT spot, but I think that him at this spot, phenomenal. And then I followed up with Anthony Santander, new year, new team kind of thing last year, plus injuries. We all knew what he was doing in 24. And I've always called him like the Kyle Schwarber light. Then I follow up with Kerry Carpenter, who I really like, who I think has another step, and I think he's going to take a step forward. End of the draft with Jack Leiter, who had bright spots last year, and Edward Cabrera, who's now on his new team to the Cubs. I'm liking where I'm going with things. Now, coming up next is Dom's rebuttal to what he feels how my team went, coming up right after this.
And all right, guys, tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert start to finish without the stress or guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with your local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employment forms and work to get your everyday deductions. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it for you. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert just for $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. And all right, guys, thank you for making Locked On Fantasy Baseball your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. You already live your team every day. Now take it up a level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayers Club today and get Locked On Fantasy Baseball with no interruptions, member-only Discord access, and you'll also be able to access Locked On merch and much more. For all just $5 a month or $50 a year, check out the link in the show notes for more. But all right, let's jump back into it. Matt gave you a breakdown of the team, how he did. I'm going to jump into it. I'll give my take on it. Overall, before I dig in and, really tear it up a little bit, Matt, I do think it is a very solid overall team. I'm especially fond of what you did with the pitching staff, kind of what, Matt and I special in. Even Matt has been deemed the pitcher whisperer, so Matt knows what he's doing, especially when it comes to pitching, right? So let's get into the team. I love how you started it off, Matt, with Julio, Gunnar, and James Wood. That is a great hitting core. I love the two outfielders in the first 3 picks. We've hit on how outfielding is very tough this year. It thins out quick. My strategy, what I've been saying, is I like to leave the first 4 rounds with at least 2 outfielders. You hit that nail on the head. You jump in with the Gilbert-Ryan combo, which I actually think is the exact same combo I had for my 1-2 in the last mock draft I did. So perfect there too. I cannot hate on that. Where, you actually kind of spoke on this yourself, where I kind of maybe would have started to move a little bit differently was Schwellenbach is a great number 3 starting pitcher. I love it. But you already have 2 aces that are going to be arguably probably the best 1-2 punch in the league. So I don't know if you needed to do that. Obviously, it's going to sound cliche, but Austin Riley in the 6th. I think we've been saying, I think it was Austin Riley in the 4th last year. Now it's Austin Riley in the 6th this year is kind of like the cliche move for me. I still would have done that here. That kind of like changes up almost how I would have looked at the draft afterwards. So I'm not going to get into whole philosophy at that point, but that's just what I would have done there differently. You spoke about O'Neil Cruz. I'm not going to get into that again. He's kind of like a mystery bag, but I just feel like at 27, I don't know how much different we're going to see, but I do feel like last year is like the floor. I think that's the worst you'll ever see of O'Neil Cruz. I think the batting average comes back up to 240, 250. See a little bit more power. I still think he's a good pick around this time, but just a very mystery bag type player. And then you spoke about after O'Neil Cruz went, I like Michael Harris a little bit more. I like Teoscar Hernandez a little bit more. But once again, not going to buzz tidbits with you there. After that, love Jordan Westburg. Big breakout potential there as long as he can stay healthy. Michael Busch, big season last year with the Cubs. The power's legit. I think he has room to grow. Not going to bust tidbits with you there either. Like that pick. Jose Altuve at 2nd. He's getting older. I'm not a huge fan there. There's not so much speed left in the tank. The batting average got a little bit worse last year. I'm not sure how he's going to hold up over time. I believe I have Luke Keeschel higher at second base, who went a little bit later. I do not, but I think I'm going to adjust my rankings to maybe reflect them a little bit, being a little bit closer. But, it's still not a bad pick. Love Brandon Woodruff and Trey Savage. Nothing bad to say about them. Jeff Hoffman, I have him really low at closer. Bad ERA last year, high whip for a closer. Did have the Ks and the saves. May have taken a closer a little bit earlier where, kind of maybe where he took O'Neil Cruz, could have went, Cade Smith there, Duran, Hader, one of those guys, would have preferred an elite closer on this team over Jeff Hoffman, who did struggle at times last year. And then Dennis Santana's on a really bad team, even though he was good. He is a good pitcher, just not probably going to get too much opportunity there. Love Chase Burns and Andrew Abbott. As I said, Matt, this rotation, it's hard for me to say anything bad about it. He did a really good job with it. I took Torkelson in the last draft. Think he has a lot of pop. Good counting stats there too, runs and RBIs as well. Mike Trout, it's just such a great pick. Getting him this late, I want to walk away with Mike Trout in probably every draft I do this year. Just that value is great if he gives you 60% of what Mike Trout does. It's a great value there. Here's where I'm going to bust your chops a little bit. Then you go with two more outfielders back to back. I would have liked to see you maybe back up. Maybe I know Westberg does have second eligibility, but maybe get another third baseman. So if you could, potentially move Altuve around, or move Westberg around if Altuve gets hurt. Rather, is what I'm trying to say. You could throw Westberg at second, put whoever else you get at third. Kind of makes that look a little bit cleaner there. I don't think you need, like I said, all three of those outfielders, even though I do like Santana. I think he, will be a little bit better. And even if maybe we go with like somebody that's going to give us a little bit more batting average there, even, who fits this team well, Matt? A Jose Caballero type who's going to give you some steals. Maybe not so much batting average, but definitely could give you some chip in steals here. Jack Leiter, another thing, even there with your bench, maybe get some, throw another utility bat in there. I don't know if we need Leiter and Edward Cabrera. I do like Edward Cabrera a little bit more than Leiter. Basayo, great pick, awesome pick there. I think he's a potential breakout at catcher. I have him in my top 10 at catcher. Actually, I have him at 8. So I do think that is a very good pick there. Overall, Matt, solid team. Just might have switched up how I approached the hitting a little bit. And maybe one less starting pitcher. Like I said, I don't think we need Leiter and Cabrera at the end there. But overall, solid job here. If I had to throw a grade on it, solid B. We're getting on the verge of a B plus here just because of how good the pitching is. And I like the strategy of making sure your outfield looks really good. So, can't hate on that. You're, a pickup of a really good closer and, a nice little Swiss Army knife utility guy from having arguably the best team in the league. So solid job here. I definitely think you did very well. But before Matt jumps in and gives his rebuttal and, speaks a little bit more about this team, we're going to take a quick break. All right, Matt, let's get back into it. Any more thoughts here on this team and what I had to say?
I mean, I agree with a lot you're saying. I don't agree wholeheartedly about the O'Neil Cruz kind of thing. Like, I see how you kind of either have to go earlier, which kind of sucks. Like, I mean, all the strong outfielders kind of go in round 5, which I could have went Logan Gilbert and then scooped up, a better one, but also too, there's just as many question marks. Like at most, it would have been a Jackson Merrill over a Schwellenbach. I like say a Suzuki who went right before it, but I don't trust him over O'Neil Cruz.
No, you like Teoscar Hernandez, right?
I like Teoscar, but I didn't want to wait around, and I'm not going to jump ADP for it. And God forbid I wait that long to get an OF is part of the problem. And where I would have had the opportunity to get him, I was already in a different team construction where he didn't fit where I needed to pick him, essentially. That's the problem.
I might have just straight out taken him over O'Neil Cruz. I just think he's better.
I just wouldn't have jumped 5 rounds. That's the problem. He's going around 11. I'm not picking him in round 7. You know,
I'll say this. I think you're right in a competitive format where you're doing like NFBC or something like that. Sure. But I think if you're doing your home league and where I think a lot of our listeners are doing it, if you have somebody ranked higher in your rankings, I wouldn't sit back and hope he falls to me. I would take the guy like, but I'm just saying I personally have Teoscar ranked higher, so I would have taken him there.
So I get that, but also too, it's also a matter of monopolizing on value, right? So like I have O'Neil Cruz, I believe, ranked higher if I'm not mistaken, and I do, and with that, it's just I also look at it where if I can get a player later, and then I'm not going to just jump the gun 4 or 5 rounds, maybe all round, but again, at that point, I've already made a decision. And you want to just walk away with an outfield at that point solidified. And that's kind of really where it is. You're stuck at being at trying to get the best possible outcome at outfield this year. And then I feel like this year it's not as hard to build my infield for once. I feel like even though, there's some question marks surrounding Altuve and such, I feel like my infield is actually really good. Where I really messed up was just not having a stronger UT. I think that's my biggest weakness of this whole team. I could have done without the Savage, and I could have gotten, another bat there, but it all depends. Like, there's a lot of question marks as we go later, and it's just don't know. I could have gotten a better, closer at those picks. Yes, I could have. There is a couple ways that I could have approached this, but at the end of the day, I feel like I formed the best team build for how it started and how it ended. And no matter what, if it's my UTs that are my issue, I'll figure that part out because I'm just going to stream. And I guarantee either Kerry Carpenter or Anthony Santana will be dropped. But they also are the highest upside players I'd feel on my team, in all honesty, because out of between the 2 UT guys and my bench players, my bench bats, because they're going to be crushing it if they all hit. And I think Santander will, and I think Kerry Carpenter will be the one that's kind of on the fence of whether or not I'll actually see him return on my investment. But I think I got him in like round 17, so who really cares at this point? If you're really, round 20 actually, if you're really caring what's going on there with your bats, then you got real problems and you're too clingy. He's a guy that you drop at a bat and an eye if there's somebody else out there. Could I have gotten a Matt McLean? That actually probably would have been a better pick. Didn't even realize he was still there. That actually would have been a very interesting pick. I actually would have preferred that, in all honesty. But yeah, I mean, that I look at it and there's not many decisions I could have made differently in this build, except for maybe, like you said, going earlier for closer and maybe going earlier for another OF. That really would have been my 2 changes.
Yeah, I'm not like you're talking about your 2 utilities. I'm not mad at your utilities. I'm not mad at it all. I don't like the position eligibility. I don't like that you don't have the flexibility to just throw somebody like you nailed a Matt McLean. Kind of helps you. I like the guys that you have for your your infield. But I don't like that there's not the flexibility if something happens to an Altuve or even Westberg, who's been hurt the last 2 years, where you don't have somebody that could just come in and you talked about McLean, I talked about Jose Caballero, Brendan Donovan, even some guys that would have helped you guys. What you talked about, I think this team maybe a little bit more speed, maybe a little bit more batting average, but it's nitpicking at that point because it is a very good team overall. Just maybe a couple too many outfielders. I don't think we need 6 outfielders.
That's 5, but I guess Trout is 6. Yeah, but
yeah. So and it's not horrible, but you know what? Just to get us that flexibility of somebody gets hurt, plug and play. Even a Colt Keith who has first, second, and third eligibility, is another guy there. It goes to the end of drafts you could look at. But you did a good job here, Matt. We talked about Mike Trout being one of the biggest scratch off cards in fantasy baseball this year, going in post round 18 at times. We didn't even touch on Edward Cabrera. All the upside that he has going to the Cubs, figure things out, goes to a better team, potentially better coaching over there, like him in round 22 as your last starting pitcher. Incredible value on a guy like that. Chase Burns, a name that we didn't get to touch on too much today. Big upside there is what is Matt? Your SP6? That's insane. I that's something I can't understand. I got him. I took him in my mock draft too. I think he's somebody that I think once we get spring training going, we get video of him throwing 100 miles an hour and striking everybody out, and we remember the upside. I think he's somebody who rises in drafts. But I'll say this: even Chase Burns as an SP4, I think is still going to be good value on a guy like that. Who else? I think we did a good job of covering a lot of these names. James Wood, maybe we didn't touch on too much, but some people might look at the numbers from last year. I think he did hit under 260, but he still has that power speed combo, and I think he's still under 24 years old. Maybe he's I think he's 23 or 24, but he's still young enough that he could still take it up to a next level. And James Wood could be somebody that we're talking about taking in the first round next year. So I love that pair with Julio. So overall, good build. Not many players on this team that I wouldn't take at all. I'll be honest with you. Maybe it's just Jeff Hoffman. Otherwise, Jack Leiter maybe. And that week took him is fine. I might even take him there too. Not mad at that. But otherwise, like I said, I can't really talk too much smack about it. Very good team. I'm going to give it a B on a very close verge to a B plus. Matt, I honestly don't have too many thoughts here. I don't know if there's anything that you want to close it out on. Anything you felt about picking at, what was it, pick 7? Maybe some advice on that?
Yeah, pick 7's rough. I mean, I like the first round double tap, like how I don't have many picks, but ultimately, like it starts getting harder as it goes. But I prefer to be in the middle of the draft in a 12-team league or at the very end. Being in the beginning, I don't like it with how many teams. And as the league gets bigger, I really do prefer to be in the middle. So it definitely gets harder as you get earlier, but you start off with a higher end caliber player. But I'm able to snag guys that I think are coming on values too. So you just got to pick where you're going to shoot your shots, essentially. And ADP kind of fell to me a lot in this. And, I got steals on pitchers, and you really just couldn't pass on it. Like where Abbott went, where Woodruff went. Shoot, even how Schwelly just felt like that. Like there was stuff like that. And also too, to highlight James Wood, do not pass on him in drafts. Yeah, he hit right under 260 at 256. But still managed to finish with 31 home runs. And here's the crazier part too. He also had 87 runs and 94 ribs on a team that's still up and coming with also a Dylan Cruz that hasn't really even broken out yet. There's a lot left on the table with the Nationals as a whole and James Wood. And the speed really didn't even show out because he only had 15 stolen bases this year. And like, it's just kind of wild. Like the dude barreled 16.3% in his true rookie season and then matched that up with a hard hit percentage of 56.3%. What does that tell you? 40 home run upside right there. And the batting average should be better because the dude walks 12.3% of the time. So if he brings his K percentage down from 32 to 27% and he's hitting 280, which isn't a hard adjustment. That's a 5% difference with also an unsustainable bad rate. So there has to be positive regression as well. So James Wood is actually like a sneaky pick and will probably, like Dom said, be the last year that you're getting him this cheap. So I'm really like big on James Wood this year because I wouldn't be surprised if he finishes with like anywhere from 36 to 42 home runs, along with like 20 to 25 stolen bases, batting about 275. And if that team takes a step forward that I think they're going to, just Dylan Cruz alone, he's going to go 100 and 100 in the runs and ribs category. That's a first round talent caliber player. So James Wood is probably one of the best values in the draft, hands down, even though it's an earlier pick.
Yeah, and I think some people forget that James Wood is 6'7", 234, mountain of a man. And
23, I might add.
Yeah, that literally took the words out of my mouth. I was guessing earlier whether he was 23 or 24. Yeah, he's 23 this year. So that's fantastic. But Matt, unless you got any final thoughts, I'm gonna get us out of here.
No, I got nothing really left, but I'll take us out of here, guys. Look, the rest of the week we're covering shortstops. Breaking it down from 1 to 12, and then 13 to 24. So shortstop is a tricky position this year, and you're gonna want to see who to draft this year. So come and check us out for the rest of the week, hitting you for the next couple of days. So guys, please like, subscribe, comment, rate, review, do everything you can to make this show the biggest success humanly possible. And thank you for tuning in today on Locked On Fantasy Baseball. Make sure you subscribe and follow Locked On Fantasy Baseball so you get all the latest episodes. And for those on video, we send you the first 24/7 national Locked On MLB Podcast Network YouTube channel. On audio, make sure you make your second listen Locked On MLB. Peace out, guys.
So